collapsed again. Then the ambulance came and they said, is everything okay? I said, yeah, I don't think I was dehydrated. I think I was just stressed. It's strange. Like, this is a guy who runs a fitness company and yet is collapsing from burnout.
That's Akash, founder of RNT Fitness, which specializes in helping high performers like founders.
We've actually built our own unique technology platform for our members. It's been a scary journey doing this kind of bootstrapped with my own money. I have a book out called Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, published, it'll be 5 years this year.
He drops clear, practical advice. Take your notebook out.
Artificially gamify it, because again, founders love games. Basically, you're just looking for a way to eliminate the decision around the food and automate that into your life. Yeah, so I said 30 minutes is the bare minimum. Now, what do you include? I would probably just go full body. When you have high volume foods, it's gonna take up a lot of space in your gut, so you're gonna feel full. So either a walking meeting in live, or if you just have a few meetings where you don't really need to show your video, you can just take it on the go.
Find more in the full episode. Fitness and health is such a big problem for so many founders because they get so obsessed with what they're doing, right? And you obviously worked with many founders. What do you see the challenges of founder mindset and staying healthy and fit?
I think the biggest challenge founders have is they put their health and fitness last. They put themselves last. Their business is their number one. They've got a family, they've got a couple of babies that they're juggling. But generally speaking, the business is number one and everything else kind of falls to the wayside, typically until they have some sort of oh shit moment. I don't know if we're allowed to say we can spare, but until that sort of thing happens, usually when a blood test goes wrong, their doctors are like, you've got a certain amount of years to live, which we hear quite often, or they feel embarrassed by what they see in their pictures or how their clothes feel. Until that sort of moment happens, they just keep going. And then they're like, I need to actually do something about my health. So I'd say the biggest one is health is not even on the radar. It's just business. That's it. I just need to make this thing work and I need to keep growing it. And I would say along the way, what we see a lot of founders do is they'll try little quick things. Like they'll see something really easy, like, oh, let me try this, I don't know, keto. I'll try a bit of that. I'll try this juice diet. I'll try this detox. And they're always looking for very quick things. So they'll jump on these quick things. A couple weeks later, they'll be off and completely, back to square one. And we see a lot of founders go through that pendulum swing where they're either all in or they're all out. And they don't really do that with their business, because their business, they're just all in. But with everything else, especially with their health and fitness, it's just the pendulum just swinging on and off, and usually more towards the offside.
And how big a role of stress is there in that too? Because is that not stopping them from being healthy? Is it their barrier or is it time? What's the big blocker there?
Yeah, I mean, time is the most obvious one. When we think about founders, we think they're time poor. So when we think about health and fitness, we need to do training, we need to prepare our meals, we need to prioritize sleep, we need to go for walks and all these things. When you're looking at this list of things, you're thinking, I haven't got time for this, right? I'd rather spend that time on my business. Now, the paradoxical thing is if you actually do these things, you will be more productive in your business. Like when you do sleep better. Have you ever had like days where you slept for 3-4 hours? And tell me how productive you are the next day.
So you know what I've done is I stopped wearing my Whoop and then it can't tell me off. So if I don't know how long I slept, then it's fine, right? So it's denial, right?
Yeah, that's another. So denial on that. So when you sleep less, you're going to be less productive. When you don't walk, when you don't move around, you're just going to be less productive. And what tends to happen with a lot of founders is they don't even realize how unproductive they are. And what they use for energy becomes things like caffeine. We were discussing before, like how in the US, Adderall and things like that are a massive thing. So stimulants become a big part of this a founder's diet, so to speak. Caffeine, and then there's also food, where whether it's used in two ways. One is as an energy source. So you just think, I just have another snack to get me through the day, another cookie, another biscuit. Next thing you know, you've probably gone through a whole packet by the end of the day. Or it's on the other side where founders use it as a way to take the edge off. They had a hard day, they're finally get a moment to think, all the stress, and they have that kind of, and just relax now. What do? You reach for something easy, you reach for something that's going to make you feel good, and it gives you that dopamine spike in the evening. And I think so we've got the time issue, but we kind of got the food and the stress eating, and it all kind of links in together because most founders just, because they haven't got a system in place, they're all over the place. And as a result, if it's not a quick fix or if it's not something that's going to make them feel instantly good, it's not going to happen.
We mentioned about systems, right? And it's just the amount of time I've told myself, okay, this week, we wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and we go to the gym before work, and the amount of times actually happen is very low. So how do you design a system to work for you?
So I think the reality is every founder knows health and fitness is important. Like, I don't think there's anyone out there thinking, you know what, this is not something I need to pay attention to. Everyone listening to this is probably modeling on thinking, oh yeah, I know this is important. I know I need to do it. To be honest, I don't think any founder would do anything about it until something bad happens. Now, whether it is that health check I mentioned, or whether they just feel embarrassed in how they look in a picture or how they fit in a suit or whatever it may be, until that happens, nothing's going to change. So that's the first thing, okay? When that trigger moment happens, that's when you got to take action. And that's when you got to think, all right, why is this important to me? Why have I felt triggered by whatever's happened? And you kind of formulate your why, right? From there, there's a couple of things you need to do to build the system. Now, the first thing is, what do you actually need to do? So you don't need to train every day, okay? So I would suggest the founder can do really well on 3 30-minute workouts a week, okay? So that's the first thing. They need to have some sort of nutrition system. So the way I like to think about it is the more you can limit decision fatigue when it comes to your nutrition, the better. Now, most people think when I say to them, right, I think I need to eat the same thing every single day for the next 14 days, they're like, no, I love variety. I'm a foodie, all these sorts of things. But if you look at the average person's supermarket shop, they're probably eating I think there's actual research on this. So they're only eating like 13 foods. Anyway, they're already eating the same thing every day. But when you tell them you need to eat these things, they feel, I feel restricted. But what we found is after a few weeks of doing this, people feel so much lighter in their mind, but also in their body, because now they've taken away the decisions around their food, and the foods they're eating are easy to prep. So we're not asking for gourmet meals, but something they can just prep in a couple of minutes, or it can be something where they know they're going to Marks and Spencer's, for example, and they're going to pick XYZ every single day, or they may be using a meal prep company that's giving them XYZ. Basically, you're just looking for a way to eliminate the decision around the food and automate that into your life. I think that's probably one of the biggest levers a founder can pull to feel better immediately, to improve their digestive system, and most of all, to improve their energy. And after doing that for 2 weeks, you will find that you build a habit of your nutrition, and then it becomes a momentum snowball from there. So we discussed training 3 times 30 minutes. We discussed nutrition, finding some sort of automation, and then save the flexibility for when you have more time. So that could be the weekends, that could be the evenings, depending on when that is. And then the third thing is finding ways to integrate movement into your day. So if you're a founder who works on a laptop or a computer, which is, I'd say everyone listening to this, the chances are you could go days where your step count's only 2,000-3,000, and I'll be willing to bet if anyone doesn't pay attention to their step count, it probably is going to be that. So there's a couple of things you can do which make it very easy to integrate into your day. The first is taking more walking calls. So either a walking meeting in live, or if you just have a few meetings where you don't really need to show your video and you can just take it on the go, that's a really good one. The second one, I think this has been one of the biggest game changers if you have the space at home, is get a walk pad. Don't know if you've seen these.
I've got one at home.
Have you got one at home? Okay, it's an absolute game changer for things like admin, Zoom calls, and you don't need to walk super fast on this, but it just gives you a little bit of activity, feel a bit better. There's nothing worse than sitting there going through like tedious stuff for your business, and you're just sitting there and your energy's getting lower and lower. Whereas when you're walking, you'll feel a bit better. And then the third thing is combining it with your meals. So one thing I really like is 10-minute walks. Everyone can do a 10-minute walk, right? When you say, I'll go for an hour walk, it feels like, I haven't got time for that. But a 10-minute walk straight after your meal, A, you can feel better from a digestion perspective, but B, you're just going to get them in. If you eat 3 times a day, you've got a 30-minute across the day. So walking and general movement done in those 3 ways can be really an easy way for founders to get extra activity in.
That's really useful. I'm going to dive a bit more into each of those bits there. Yeah, go for it. So you mentioned about the 3 30-minute workouts, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I think holds a lot of people back is that they overcomplicate what to do in those 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So how should they think about that? Was there a certain split you'd recommend, or how? Yeah. What are those 3 30-minute workouts?
Yeah, so I said 3 30 minutes is the bare minimum. Firstly, if you have a home setup, great. You don't need to go to a gym, because that gets rid of another objection. And a pair of dumbbells is completely fine. It doesn't need to be anything sophisticated. Now, what do you include? I would probably just go full body. I would go, if I just give like a general sort of workout, I would pick an upper body push exercise. So anything that works, any sort of pressing. I'd pick a pull exercise, so some sort of row movement or a chin up if you have that at home. I'd pick some sort of a quad focus lift, so like a squat or a split squat or a lunge, and then something that works the posterior chain, so like a deadlift variation. Now, though that covers all your major muscle groups, pick one exercise of each, do 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 12 reps, and you can either position them in like a antagonistic fashion where you pick opposing muscle groups. So it could be upper body push with lower body pull, and then upper body pull with lower body push. And going between the two will A, save time, and B, because they're non-competing muscle groups, it will allow you to still perform each of them at a really good way. Now, the idea of pairing exercises can work really, really well when you're in your time strap, because you can literally just go back and forth, without resting too much, which feels like a waste of time, but also without reducing the performance of the lift. So you're not going to get extra fatigue because they don't compete. So Those 4 exercises, and you have extra time, you can do things like arms, abs, and all that fun stuff. But that will cover your basis and build a pretty good body as well.
And then looking at nutrition as well. So I actually use like Simmerix myself. So Simmerix been on the podcast. And the challenge is sometimes is that, like I said, when it comes down to stress, is that I'll be like, I know that's fairly balanced and healthy. Maybe it's not the best for you, but it's not going to be too bad. But then I'm like, well, I'm stressed. I'm going to get some kind of market. And like, how do you juggle that where, like you said, people feel like it's boring, the food, which is healthy for them. How do you, as a founder, not just kind of still go out and get the food that's bad for you? How do you help to...
So it's great that you've got a meal prep system in there. What you're really looking for in that moment is you're looking for a dopamine hit. You're looking for something fun. Your meals are probably, because you use a meal prep company, it probably actually tastes pretty good, right? I mean, you're not going to say no, but I'm sure they taste pretty good. But what you're searching for in that moment,
You might be watching this.
is something to relieve the stress. One of the things we say with a lot of people we work with is weight management, weight loss, depending on the goal, is only actually 10% your training. Like training is not actually that big of a thing. Like we think it's got about all the way into the gym. It's actually not when it comes to weight management. It's about 40% nutrition. It's about 50% managing your stress and emotions, which is kind of what you alluded to. And one of the biggest growth hacks a founder can do, and anyone who's like very, very busy and juggling a lot, is try and change the way they deal with stress in those moments. Because if you don't get to the root cause of why you keep needing to go to Costa Coffee and grab those dark chocolate rice cakes or whatever they are, that's just going to keep happening. It's just, the calories are going to keep coming in, and you're just going to keep piling on the pounds. And it'll happen slowly. Like it'll be a death by 1,000 cuts. It won't be like overnight. You're just going to go, oh, what happened? It's going to be like 6 months later. You look at yourself and think, oh, what the fuck happened? Right? And you realize you added all these extra calories on top of your nutritious meals. So really, you've got to get to the root of how do I deal with this stress? And then, I mean, that's a deeper question here. It's like, do we need to use different mechanisms, or do you need to fix something in the business that's, in need of it? Or is it a habitual thing? Have you just got a habit around this? Now, I think a lot of founders have have vices, right? Everyone's got their thing. Sometimes it's literally just the work itself. Like you would just work till you drop. Sometimes it will be drugs. We talked about like Adderall and things like that, but also it could be harder drugs. Alcohol, gambling, porn, all these things are effectively vices that a lot of founders use to take the edge off, because life in the business is so stressful. They need something on the other side to counteract it. But we were kind of discussing this off air beforehand of like, when you're operating in that state of like pain and like how much suffering can I take, that's when these vices come into play. But when you're operating in a state of like, you know what, like I'm playing this game out of fun, you probably find that you have less of these vices. I find more of these vices come earlier on in your founder career than later on, depending on the person.
Hello. Quick interruption to let you know a bit more about Bay HQ. We're the community for high growth Asian heritage entrepreneurs, operators, and investors in the UK. You can join us totally free at thebayhq.com/join. There you'll get our CEO structure in your inbox every week, which is content, events, and opportunities. You can also get access to our free Startup Fundamentals course by joining. Let's get back to the show. I mentioned that about sugar, for example, right? For me, that's a big one. Is that cookies is my big weakness. Is that I'm pretty good at like not drinking and don't take drugs, all that stuff. But sugar is an element, and obviously, being from an Asian background, very heavily the risk of diabetes and all these problems are there as well. And I guess in particular with sugar, have you got any advice there of how do you train yourself, or how do you manage the systems to avoid using those as outlets?
Yeah, one of the best things I think you can do is implement a 14-day period called we call it cleaning the palate. And it's basically a 14-day period where you eat, what I mentioned, you eat the same 3 or 4 meals a day, but they are all whole food, nutrient dense, and high volume. So what you'll find is if you take this approach, and what I mean by this is everything's basically single ingredient. So example is broccoli is a single ingredient, a pack of cookies has loads, right? So just the kind of, but if you think about high volume, nutrient dense foods, when it's in your gut and in your sort of stomach, and just speaking very simply here, when you have high volume foods, it's going to take up a lot of space in your gut, so you're going to feel full. When you have cookies in your gut, it takes less space up. Now I'm speaking very simplistically here, right? So don't quote me on the slide. But I'm trying to illustrate the point of like satiety is a massive thing. When you eat the wrong meals at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you are eating those more sugar-based meals, simple foods, you find yourself getting more hungry or more in that snacky mindset. Whereas what we find is if you implement the system of cleaning the palate where you focus on single ingredient foods, whole foods, nutrient dense, people actually feel really full and they actually struggle to finish the food. And that's one of the best ways to sort of reset the palate and reduce that sort of urgency and desire for sugar on a constant basis. Now, it's a difficult thing to do because you've got to get your head around the idea of, I'm going to eat pretty much the same food each day. But if you can just create a set of meals that you can agree to, like, for example, you've got meal prep companies, so it's already there. Get the calories right, get the macros right. So make sure there's a protein target. And that's a big part of it. Like, make sure you're having enough protein in there. And then as long as they're all nutrient dense and whole foods, you'll find yourself actually feeling really full.
One of the things which I find is I can sometimes use an excuse, right, is that you're supposed to eat a varied diet, right? You're supposed to have different types of foods. And we're talking about there about having similar foods all the time. Like, how do you manage that to make sure you are getting all the nutrients you need, even if you aren't necessarily eating that many different types of food?
Yeah, so you don't necessarily need to eat like this for the rest of your life. But I think as a reset of your system, I think it's a really good way to do so. Also, as I mentioned before, most people are already eating the same things by sort of habit or default, whether it's where they live next to or what their local store is. So it's already kind of happening. But you've got variety across 3 or 4 meals. I don't worry too much about these ticking all the boxes, because it's a short period of just what we're trying to do here is rewire the brain to A, want different types of foods, but B, also just build a healthy system into your day-to-day. So then when you do feel stressed or you do feel like you're going out for a meal or whatever, you go for the healthier option. Like, for example, now because I'm so far into this journey now, I don't sit there and think, oh, yeah, I tell you, I went to that, was it Farmhouse?
Farmer Day, yeah.
Yeah, so I just went for a tofu salad and rice. It's like, but I didn't go there and raid the cakes there and this and that. It's just like, yeah, cool, that looks pretty healthy, I'll get that. So what we're trying to get out of is having no system. So we need to go kind of extreme, lock something in, and then find the flexibility later. And what I find is founders like systems, and they kind of like something a bit extreme, which will then evolve into some flexibility later on.
Yeah, and then the other thing you mentioned there too is about the walking element and getting in bits of exercise where you can. And one of the things I do is I intentionally get off a stop early, essentially. So I'm walking 20 minutes to the office every day, and 20 minutes back. So that gives me 40 minutes every day of walking. Yeah. So I do on average 12,000 steps a day. So easy. Even though I've been crap with the gym and crap with all this stuff and I eat too many cookies, if I like walking 12,000 steps a day is some level of balance and counteracting in some element. And is there another little tips like that you mentioned? So you mentioned about having a walking pad at home, or how do you try to get in that lower intensity exercise? Yeah. I guess is outside of your half an hours.
Yeah, what you mentioned there, like getting the train stop earlier, taking the elevators, walking up the elevators rather than standing on the elevators, walking calls, 30-minute walk first thing in the morning, and then maybe in the evening as well. And then it's the walk pad. So those are like all the things that add up. If you're getting 12,000 steps, I find people that work in the city find it really easy. Like, we're in central London right now. Just that commute makes it so easy to get into. I think the challenge is more when they're working from home. That's when you need to be more intentional about, I actually need to get out of the house. Otherwise, I'm going to have the house for 3 days. That sort of scenario can very easily happen if you're not careful.
I think for me, the walking as well is productive procrastination, right? Because I usually tend to be listening to podcasts, and it's not my own podcast, I'm not that vain, but it's where I listen to American podcasts, for example. I'm trying to understand about different parts of the ecosystem. Yeah. So we're going to think sometimes of that guilt, right? So if you're not at your desk, you're not working. But because I'm listening to podcasts, I can still feel like, okay, I'm learning stuff that's going to then inform my content. It's going to inform other things. So that's another thing I try to use of how to take that time out.
Well, one of the best things I did when I started an online business in 2017 was I realized that I was always on. I was always, as in digitally, just always on. So a few months in, I started to just go for these walks where I would listen to nothing. I'd listen to no podcast, no audio, and didn't use my phone either. So I'd actually had 30 minutes each day, which I was just unplugged walking. And I found that it was one of the best things for my mental health, but also just from a productivity, creativity perspective, it allowed me to kind of see the wood for the trees. Because when you're always pounding on your keyboard or you're always plugged into a podcast, you can find yourself just always distracting your thoughts. So you're never actually understanding what are the big problems I'm trying to solve. Because if you think about how problems are solved, most of the time you're aware of the problem, you kind of load it up and your subconscious solves it when you're in the shower or whatever. But why is it happening in the shower? Because you've actually got no inputs. So this is why I implemented this thing once. I did it a few times by accident. I think I must have just forgotten my phone or whatever. And then I was like, you know what, this is actually, and this has been a habit I've kept in all throughout the years. So I try and do my exercise unplugged. So whether it's in the gym, running, walking, I'll do at least 30 minutes a day where I don't listen to anything. And that can actually be one of the most productive periods for the stuff I'm doing, because my idea is just going through the roof.
Right at the start, you mentioned about needing a trigger to change your habits, right?
Yeah.
And I guess for some people who maybe they're like, okay, I already know that I don't like how I look, I already know these things, but it's still not making them change, right? Is there any way to try to artificially trigger that? And what were the triggers for you? Or have you always been quite good with fitness?
Yeah, I'll cover the first bit. And this kind of links to you said about the sugar. Like, how do you actually stop this? Like, I know I said a few things around having high protein, whole foods, and all this, but how do you still stop going to the cookie? I think it's accountability. Now, the accountability can be created in many different ways. You can even just have a couple of founders who decide together that, all right, guys, we're going to now, for the next 28 days, because founders love a little challenge to get things going, at least get things going. We're not going to have any snacks. We're not going to have any sugar. We're going to drink 3 liters of water a day. We're going to have 10,000 steps. That can be a good way to then build the momentum for, you got to keep it on afterwards. But I think some sort of peer level accountability can be really powerful. And I think founders thrive off that, like that competitive edge. So that would be one way to sort of artificially gamify it, because again, founders love games, anything that spikes the dopamine hit. And then the second part is like, what would be my triggers? So I've had like multiple different ones across the years. I'd say my first fitness journey started when I was 17. I was a skinny fat kid with moves in a pot belly, probably very similar to what you were as well. That kind of Gujarati look, where we had no muscle mass. And one of my best friends, I was actually destined for a career in law. I was wanting to follow my father's footsteps, be a lawyer. And then I got dragged into the gym and by my best friend, and he said, "Look, it's going to help you get girls." I said, "All right, let's give it a shot." I've got no confidence right now. This might help. I went to the gym and it just changed my life. I got completely bitten by the bug, and I never looked back. And it was through that journey over the next couple of months after, where I was applying for a career in law. And my same best friend saw me reading a nutrition article, and he said, "Dude, why don't you just do something in this?" And I didn't. This was 2008. So 2008, there was no real fitness industry that was. I didn't know what was going on, what I could do with it. But that first sort of transformation sparked the journey for me, and it kind of came out of that insecure, skinny, fat kid. But I'd say over the years, where that evolved to was, I'd say that why kind of stayed the same for a long time. And then when I felt secure in my body, it just kind of became a lifestyle. And then when I became a founder, something changed again, because I think you said earlier on, like, founders don't take their own advice. We were laughing about this before. And here I was, a founder of a fitness company. So I'm the fitness guy, right? And I'm thinking, right, I'm a fitness guy. I've been doing this for 8 years. I've competed in bodybuilding shows. I've won bodybuilding shows. I know the deal here. And I think it was a very vivid period between like end of 2018 to early 2019. And the business started growing just a bit quicker than I expected, and a bit quicker than I was probably prepared for. And I still hadn't hired enough team. I was just spread like completely thin. And it was a period of like 3 months of every day was start at 5, wake up and start at 5. I was single. You wake up, you wake up 15 minutes later, you're at the sofa, drinking coffee, and like pounding the laptop every day till about 10, 11. My step count started going from like usual 10 to like 3. The gym sessions went from like 4 a week to 1, 2, started skipping more and more. My nutrition was there or thereabouts, but I started eating less. And then 3 months later, in February 14th, Valentine's Day, I wake up around 4:30, and I'm heading to the bathroom. My mom was already awake, and so I was living at home, and I was going for a piss. And just before I went for a piss, I collapsed to the side, and luckily I missed the head of the toilet seat, fell to the side. My mom walked in, and she had to pick me up, drive me into our room. She was like, "What happened?" I was like, "I don't know." And then I walk out the door. I just thought it was a one-off. Walk out the door, and then she like, I'm about to go down the stairs, and she's like pushing me to the side. And I collapsed again. And then the ambulance came, and they said, "Is everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, I think I must be just tired or whatever." They're like, "Oh, it looks like they took me in for bloods and all this. It looks like you're chronically dehydrated." I don't think I was dehydrated. I think I was just overstressed. And what I realized that year, I battled with this quite a bit. And what I was finding is every time I was overworked, basically burnt out, I'd get chronically dehydrated. So I'd be drinking like 5-6 liters of water a day and yet pissing yellow. So when that happened, I'd be like, fuck, this is going to happen. I'd start getting sweats. I was getting, my hair would start falling out the back, and I'm getting like scabs. And it was all this was stress response. And it got to the end of the year and I was like, something needs to change. Like the systems I built before that helped me when I was a personal trainer in the city and just before running a business aren't going to save me anymore, because I need to revamp what I'm doing. And that's when I started integrating some of the things I've talked about. So the walking, making the gym sessions non-negotiable. I started going in the morning just because if I went in the day, it was not going to happen. And I just started setting myself mini goals and basically what you said, like gamifying it, and just to get myself back in the game. And it's strange. Like, this is a guy who runs a fitness company and yet is collapsing from burnout. But it was a strong reminder that, you know, that it can happen to the best of us. And I tell that story to a lot of founders because we don't think it's going to happen until it happens.
No, it's so important. Like you said, it's always, it's this thing I do as well. I know I do it myself. It's like, oh yeah, you should have balance. You should make sure you have like work-life balance. Well, I just completely break all my rules.
Yeah.
And it is that thing, I think accountability really helps that, right? Because if you had a friend as well who both of you were keeping each other accountable, that maybe would have stopped your worst successes.
Another good way of accountability, just to interrupt there, is self-accountability. So have you ever taken a picture of yourself in underwear?
So, well, not that I'm going to admit on the podcast anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob.
I mean, that's just a really interesting way of taking self-accountability of, you know, checking your body weight, checking your health stats. You know, have you done a blood test recently?
Yeah, so I have the health insurance, so you get that done every year.
Okay, so you've done the blood test, checking your body weight, and then looking at your body composition. Like, are you proud of what you see in the mirror? I'm not asking you, this is just a rhetorical question. You can answer if you want.
No, I can say honestly. So what happened to me, so before COVID, I used to be doing obstacle course races around the world, right? So it's like walking 6-pack, 14% body fat, 13% body fat, just like every day kind of thing. The pandemic, then just at the end of that, I tore my knee. And then soon after that, my dad passed away. So I didn't have that same outlet you had before of being able to use sports as my way to like deal with stress. So then I turned to sugar. I turned to like all the kind of vices and like junk food and stuff. So I went from, say, 14% body fat to about like 24% body fat within the space of like a year. And then now I'm on the way down again. But then as my stress has gone up again this year, I can see those habits creeping in again that I was able to cut out. So I'm now in a position again of where I'm probably like 80-90% body fat. But I know that I can get back to the level I once was. And that's my thing at the moment of just cutting out bits and pieces. And like you said, it's the small changes I know I need to make. But this conversation right now is helping me in certain things that, okay, I'm going to apply that myself now as well.
Well, something for you then, and this is something actually, now that you've said it, it reminds me of a lot of founders who have been successful in maintaining their health, is they find something that outside of just lifting weights, or it could be that element of lifting weights that really excites them. So, for example, I did bodybuilding for a decade, and then I stopped in 2022, and I started doing Muay Thai as my like main focus. Yeah, I did a fight. I went all in. I flew to Thailand. I had, that typical mentality of just going all in. And now I'm like, I'm obsessed with running. I just came back from Kenya. I went to run with the Kenyans in Iten. I got no business going there, right?
Got a run club tomorrow morning. Come on.
Over you. Yeah. Amazing. So this is one thing I found is, and this is kind of a building movement around founders who are kind of going all in on like a sport or like a side project, which is activity based. Because like you said, instead of the sugar, you're channeling into something that's positive. And what you'll also find is it gives you, if you're working towards, like, let's say my goal right now is to run a sub 3-hour marathon in the next year, just by default, I'm going to channel my energy in the right way. And I won't reach for certain things, or I won't do certain things because it's not going to align with that goal that also aligns with my business goal, etc. So that can be a really useful thing, is if you found, like, for example, you're finding running really enjoyable, that could be a thing to take up a notch to avoid reaching for sugar, for example.
The other thing you mentioned as well about when you had the period of burnout is that you were single at that point, right?
Yeah.
And you're no longer single, you've got a child yourself. How does that change your relationship with fitness as well? And because now you've got the both business, you've got the family, and you've got your health, and how does that change the picture?
Yeah, just in case my wife's listening to that, I was with her for like 5 months. So on that Valentine's Day, I came out from the hospital, and my mom was like, "Are you still going to meet Chani tonight?" I was like, "Yeah, I think she'd be pretty disappointed if I didn't." But it was a different life though. I was living at home, and like you said, a lot of the advice that's out there is for 20-year-olds who haven't got any responsibilities. And the one thing I've always struggled with work addiction for many years. And when my daughter arrived, it was probably the only thing that's helped me solve it. I think a lot of people have like these experiences of like, I know my why, I know my purpose. I didn't really have that sort of experience. For me, it was more, I'm more than my business. Ever since my daughter's been born, I've been able to kind of have an identity of, I'm Akash, who has a business, has a daughter, has these projects on the side, rather than I am my business. That was the biggest thing that happened with my daughter. Is it just kind of just pulled me away and made me look at it. Or actually, I'm not that thing. And I think maybe it's because that's my first business. So it's like there's a lot of that emotional identity wrapped up into it. But I think there was something deeper in that. I was very deliberate in wanting to spend more time with her. And it's actually one of the reasons why I wanted a digital business all along, because when I was an in-person gym floor personal trainer, I used to see my colleagues having children. But as a personal trainer in the city, you're out of the house at 4:35, you're back home at 10, you do that 6 days a week, and Sunday you're exhausted. So these people were having kids, and I used to say, how's the kid doing? It's like, yeah, it's all right. I've only really seen them once a week. And I remember thinking, this was my big trigger moment of thinking, I want to go digital because I don't want to live that life, but I don't want to leave the industry. So that was always my why for starting an online business in the first place. So when my daughter arrived, I was able to be an active dad and have something that's just outside of business. And that was a massive, massive shift for me. But like you said, the productivity things go out the window. I used to be a guy who woke up at 5, I'll be at my desk at 5:15, and I would just crank, the typical 3-4 hours deep work in the morning. I don't do that anymore. Like, that's not possible. Right? You wake up because your daughter woke up, not because you wanted to wake up, and then you're with her playing in the morning. And I start working out at like 8:39. But whereas before, I could do that, but then I wouldn't be with my daughter, and yeah, that's not something I want to do.
So we enjoyed this chat. We're going to go to quick 5 questions now.
Yeah, go.
So first one is, who are 3 British Asians or Asians in Britain you think are doing incredible work and you'd like to shout them out?
First one is Kabit Harrier. He's a good friend of mine. He recently moved to Dubai, but he was born and bred in Britain. So he's been in Britain most of his life. He is the co-founder of J Shetty Certification School. But the reason I mention him is I really admire him as an entrepreneur in that the way he operates. He lives a life with intention, life by design, and he's building something special. And a really good friend of mine. I love the way he operates. He's someone you definitely check out. Second is Shaz Memon. He runs
Real estate guy?
No, he runs a dental marketing agency called Digimax Dental. Really impressive company. Again, I just love the way he operates. Great brand, great at branding, great at marketing, but also he's a great dad as well. And also doing a lot of work with his humanitarian projects. Definitely worth checking out. And the third is my mom, Divya Vaghela. I'm going to give her a shout out. She's the reason I believe I'm an entrepreneur as well. I think it's in the blood. My grandfather, so they were from Uganda. They came from in 1972. And my mom tells me that he used to sell stuff in refugee camps and, have many businesses in there. She's an entrepreneur. Her sister's an entrepreneur. And then I've been one, my cousins are. And I think, and I look at what she's built over the last 25, 30 years and how resilient she did. She started when we were kids, a nursery business. She never really had any mentors or any access to education that we have now, and just kind of figured it out along the way. And I've just seen her go through all the ups and downs, and I respect her as a businesswoman as much as everything else, really, really highly. So I'm going to give her a shout out.
That's lovely. And then if you want to find out more about you, what you're up to, where should you go to?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Akash Vaghela, LinkedIn, Akash Vaghela. And my company, RNT Fitness, you can go to the website, rntfitness.com. I have a book out called Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, published. It'll be 5 years this year. So you can check that out if you're interested in learning more about the methodology behind the madness.
And is there any way that the audience could help you?
Yeah, so one interesting project we've been working on for the last couple of years is we've actually built our own unique technology platform for our members. And we'll get to the point, and we bootstrap the whole thing. And we'll get to the point now where we're potentially looking at licensing it as a separate sort of spin-off business, because it's been really successful in helping our clients. We built it from scratch because all the different white label offerings out there didn't really hit what we wanted to hit. So we wanted to build something really unique. It's been a scary journey doing this kind of bootstrapped with my own money. And we're now looking at thinking, actually, because now that we've looked around the market, we've actually got something unique here, and this could I've been speaking to a lot of trainers, and there's a lot of problems that they're having with other softwares, and there could be an interesting business play. So anyone who's done anything in licensing or that sort of SaaS area would be, I'd love to speak to more about, because there could be something here interesting on the cards.
Awesome. And any final words for the audience?
Prioritize your health now. If you're a founder listening to this, you're nodding along thinking, yeah, I've had the steps, I've had the nutrition, I know I should be in the gym. Why aren't you doing it? You know, if you listen to this and you can hand on heart say you're prioritizing your health, great. But if you know you could be doing a little bit better, then do it now. Because what you might not realize is, yeah, you might feel like you're being productive now, you might feel like you're crushing it, but imagine how much further you'd be able to take it if you are firing all cylinders. I like to think when you finally take control of your health and you get into great shape, you start seeing life in full color. You start seeing the world in full color, and your productivity goes up, your energy goes up, your confidence goes up, and all those things have an immeasurable impact on your business. And it can be one of the most ROI activity in your diary. So don't treat training and walking as a waste of time. Treat it as genuine business development time, because if you treat it seriously, it'll pay massive amounts of dividends in the future.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.